The SEC is now looking into allowing public companies to report results every 6 months instead of every 3 months, following a Truth Social post by President Trump yesterday. In a statement to CNBC, an SEC spokesperson said, at President Trump's request, Chairman Atkins and the SEC is prioritizing this proposal to further eliminate unnecessary regulatory burden on companies. In his social media post yesterday morning, President Trump made the case that a 6-month reporting basis would save firms money, allow managers to focus on properly running their companies, and help America better compete with China and that country's longer-term view of business development. We discussed this yesterday morning on the program, and you want a long-term focus on this. It's been something that a lot of people picked up later in the day. Warren Buffett's talked about. He and Jamie Dimon wrote an op-ed many years ago. Let's see, it would have been 2018, where they said short-termism is harming the economy. And that's a valid point. But in that op-ed, what they laid out was really a request for companies to stop issuing earnings per share guidance on a quarterly basis, that is, too hard to hit that number every time around. I think we'd probably like to see some disclosure from companies to see what they've done in the last 3 months. I think if you can get away from this short-term guidance, that would be fantastic. You do want companies that think longer term, and probably Amazon is the best example of that. They lost money for forever, and Jeff Bezos, in his very first letter to shareholders, told investors, we're not in this for the short term, we are in this for the long haul, and that's going to mean we're going to spend a lot of money at times and maybe even lose money. Rather than taking the profits now, we're trying to build big, and it's obviously worked out very well for that company. He was looking for shareholders that agreed with him in that mission, and he found it because he was clear about that from the very start.
But when you're trying to forecast earnings per share, you have no idea. I mean, you look at all the charges, and that's why we back everything out, and we never do GAAP, really. Right. We never do GAAP. And I don't know how many times in the past we've said, wow, the big miss on revenues, and the company says, we've got these things that are in the pipeline, and they're reporting, let's say they're reporting at the beginning of August and the quarter ended on July 31st. They can say on August 3rd, a lot of these things that we thought came in.
Right.
And we thought they were going to come in the July quarter, and they didn't. So, we pushed back, but there they are, and the stock sells off because they miss their revenues, and it's kind of, they call it lumpy. You never know when certain deals that you close are actually going to come in
on a 6-month basis.
It would, but it would only happen twice a year instead of 4 times a year.
I guess I don't have a super strong feeling about it. I understand the idea that you want probably more information from companies, not less, but I do think you don't want short-term projections.
You like reporting on like JP Morgan earnings every 3 months?
It excites us. You do too.
Does it? Okay. Let's go back. We had to celebrate our 30-year anniversary. 30 times 4.
120 earnings.
It's 120 earnings seasons times at least 500 companies.
There are thousands of companies in the S&P 500.
That's what someone once said. But there are a couple thousand we probably bought. We used to.
We used to cover more.
But it meant more because people didn't have any other way of getting some of it.
Right.
Now it's so democratized.
That's right. Yeah. Andrew did bring up a valid point that if you're only doing it every 6 months, then these investor conferences and meetings with IR would get much more important, and it does raise the question of the opacity and the democratization of that information. But a long-term focus is absolutely
another thing to ask the Treasury
Secretary. I know, I'm keeping a list.
Are you?
Yeah.
Good. Still to come.
We got a half hour. We want to make sure we hit all the
if we do, yeah.